So welcome back to my channel. This is Gamer Dom and we're back on the test server again. It's back up, had a big patch. So more changes to the Swedish TDs. Sort of boosts, I guess. Certainly in things that make them a little bit better, I think that's fair enough to say. A couple of things that make them not quite so good, but it only seems to affect tier 10, this one, the Sturmwagen 103B, and the tier 9. So Wagon 1030. So what have they done? Well, effectively they have considerably reduced the time that it takes to get into the siege mode. So if you remember, that's the mode that you need to go in, because this gun, as you see, is hull mounted, has no traverse at all. It means you have to traverse the entire tank to fire. The siege mode allows it to sort of lock down and almost get stabilised, as I always imagine it, like you see those lighting rigs that are sorting out the street lights. They put out these sort of stilts to stabilise them. Well, it's the same sort of idea. It means that this tank effectively, once it's in siege mode, and you get there by pressing X, once it's in that siege mode, it enables it to traverse without losing any kind of well, the radical doesn't get significantly bigger when it moves. In fact, on the old version it didn't move at all. The radical, it stayed pinpoint small, irrespective of where you swung around. Your camo stayed up and your binos stayed up, even there. So it stabilizes the gun, it allows it to fire much more efficiently, and you know, is basically the way to go with these things. So they've reduced the time that it takes to go from normal driving mode to that by 25%. So 2.5 seconds to just 2 seconds. That's pretty damn good. And vice versa, to come out of it, it's gone down by a massive 40%, which is huge. So 2 seconds to just 1.25 seconds. So extremely good. However, they've increased dispersion after you fired the round. Now, what happened in the old version of this tank was when it fired, the radical didn't change at all. It was still a little pinprick in the distance, which meant that you could just blast the bejesus out of anything very quickly. So they've increased it now from 3 to 18 degrees. So that will slow your accuracy down, which I think was necessary. These things otherwise would have sat right at the back and just blasted everyone to hell. Gun traverse speed has increased by 50%, so it's 5 degrees per second to 7.5 degrees per second. But you do have an increase in speed while you're in siege mode. So when you were in siege mode previously, this tank would crawl along. I mean, it was virtually not moving. So now it's got a whacking 50% increase. The tier 10 goes from 5 to 10 kph. The tier 9 from 3 to 10. So very good increases for both of those. Reload time has been standardized, whether or not you are in the travel mode or the siege mode, as they call it. So with this tank it's 7.7 seconds, whereas it used to be 9.3 when you're in travel mode and 6.4 in siege mode. So you've lost a bit in siege, you've gained a bit in travel, but still not outrageous. With the tier 9, it's 9 seconds now. It used to be 10.3 in travel and 7.5 in siege, so it means it reloads slower when you're in siege mode, which again I think is necessary. This tank was getting looking a bit OP. Gun dispersion has also been increased, so it isn't going to be quite as deadly at huge range. Now again, I found this thing was just amazing at firing at long range. There was virtually no deviation of the shell. It went true to the target and hit pretty much every time. I saw somebody else's review and they said, if you miss, it's your fault, and I think that was definitely the case with this thing. But it's gone up from 0.15 to 0.25, so it's quite a significant change percentage wise. We'll see how that plays out. The tier 9 has gone from 0.2 to 0.3, so again, fairly reasonable amount of increase there. Now, coupled with that, obviously they have, well, initially it said cancelled, now it says postponed the overmatch mechanics. So this was one of those contentious things that was on this test server testing out, was the fact that irrespective of your armour, you were able to bounce shells of any caliber if you had significant angling, had the right kind of angling. So that meant this tank, which has really good angled front there, but only 40 millimeters of armor could bounce everything, whereas under the old system it would only bounce things that under 3 times its so you times the millimeters by the shell by 3, and that's the shell size that can pen it automatically. So this time was 40 millimeters times 3 is 120, so it meant any shell over 120 or more will automatically pen the top of this, irrespective of the angle that it's being fired at. So they did away with that, changed that mechanic to give these Swedish tanks a much better chance in the game. There was such an outcry that they've actually returned to the old system. So now this thing will be penned by 120 millimeters or bigger shells automatically, irrespective of the angling. So we'll have to see what effect that has on these things, because well, you can see the video I put up a few weeks ago, last week before, I forget now, where I was in one of these things and I was shooting up another one of these things, and neither of us could pen each other. Just couldn't pen. And considering the gun on this thing has, what's the penetration? I've lost it. Penetration, there you go, 230 to 385, and this has 40 millimeters of of armor. Couldn't pen it, and even the tier 10 heavy tank, the Kranwagen, couldn't pen the front of my TD. It just was crazy. So that's gone, so we'll see now what that makes, how much of a difference that makes in the test server. So I've just put in the crew. This was one of my girls that I got on the real server, so I put her in this tank just to, for the time being, just to see what it looks like, and just 2 other brand new 100%ers. So they're not the outstanding crew. I have got 6 cents, however, which will be useful, I think. So let's go and have a look and see what it's like for real. Of course, I say for real, but this is still the test server, so it's not really for real. But you know, you know what I mean. So I think I'm going to go out to the left. Let's see what we can do over there. Try and set up in siege mode and see whether we can get any victims. It's noticeable again, there aren't that many people playing the Swedish tanks anymore. There's a Kranwagen on our team. Not a single Swedish tank on the enemy team. So you can see the nerf, or just the novelty of them, has reduced. Maybe the nerf has had an effect, I don't know. But certainly you definitely aren't seeing as many on the screen on the test server as you once did. So it's still got great mobility no matter what you no matter what they've done with this tank. It still moves very, very nicely. So I'm going to try out the siege mode. There we go. Been spotted. Bounced the shot, which is rather good. Pulls back nicely. Pulls back very nicely indeed. Let's see if we can get round. Let's try and get a shot on that. Managed to put one straight through the E5's front. So this is where this thing is made for. So I'm able to just poke over the top of the hill using the angling. Trying to get a shot in on that E5's commander's cupola. Bounced off it. Don't like the fact this guy is just using me as support. There are RT in the game, so I do not want to be spotted too long. Ow, took a couple of shots there. Okay, so like the fact you can actually pull back now. Bounced off him. Because of the elevation, you can actually do pretty well. Bouncing shells all over the place here. CVP hit me though. Didn't like that so much. Just disappear, get a bit of comfort time. Hit him as he flies across, which is nice. I like this tank, I really like this tank. So much fun. And you can see I can traverse the opportunity to fire there. Still, somebody else got him, okay. So the gun traverse when you're in lockdown mode is, oh, and I got arted, okay. So it doesn't matter how good your tank is, you can still get arted. So yeah, it still looks like it bounces shots. I guess the angling is so extreme that you need, what did I say, it's 40mm now, 120mm cannon. The how big does an E5 cannon have? Is it 90mm or 100? May not be 120, so it still bounced some shells, which is pretty good. Bounced 2,250, but then that's largely because I was able to use that crest. So I was poking over, and I was only really doing it just to try it out. It probably, in the real game, I probably would have pulled out earlier than that because it was tempting fate. The RT were bound to have a go at me at some point, but it was interesting to see what the bounce ability was. The gun looks still pretty good. I haven't noticed particularly that being a bad effect, the fact that the dispersion seems to have changed, but yeah, interesting. Right, look at the gun still. We'll have another go in a minute and see what whether that was a one-off. So somewhat surprisingly that was a win. Third class mastery, got spotter badge, finished middle of the team, not so great. Fired 8 shots, hit with 6, penned with 4, 1,651 damage, 9 hits received, 3 pens and 6 bounces. So I think that was largely because of the angling, and those guns that were firing us obviously weren't 120mm plus, because we still blocked 2,250, and under the old mechanics, obviously you need to hit 3 times, the shell needs to be 3 times the armor values of the tank you're firing at, and maybe those guns weren't. So 1,192 assistance, made 31,000 credits. Got to take off the cinnamon because I haven't got any in this garage, so we lost 7,000 that we would have made normally 13,000 on that, which isn't too bad in a tier 10 game. And 1,800 assistance with times 2. So we'll have another go, but that actually doesn't look like that's a really wrong tank. That one doesn't look like it's been significantly nerfed. It's okay. It's alright. Definitely you notice the aiming radical after you fired, but the mobility in siege mode is a huge advantage. Really like that. Okay, Seek 309 assault, and we're attacking back in the tier 10. This could be useful to be able to try out the siege mode, given the fact you can come out of siege mode is much quicker now. Means hopefully you can get into a position, put into siege mode, and then get back out again fairly rapido. So I'm going to play it a little bit cautiously to start with. There's 2 enemy artillery, but as we found in the previous game, artillery will still have a bit of a field day with you. So I'm going to move out here, I'm going to drop into X. Oops. See whether we can get some shots. Before we set that object on fire. That's made his bay. I'm sure he's very happy with us now. Moving back because the artillery are likely to be looking over this way now. That was a lucky shot, but I'll take that. There goes the RT. Sure enough. I'm quite forward to see. I like the fact you could redeploy now while in siege mode. Previously you would have had 0 mobility. Oops, they're coming to get me. Now I have a little bit of mobility, which is nice. That was a bit of a silly shot. That wasn't the gun, that was me. So you can track much easier in this thing. There it is again. Come on, reappear. Do we find the grill? Yes, we do. How the hell did I miss him? Took him down. Being flanked by T-54. I'm amazed I haven't been hit by RT yet. Saw the one shell land and splash. Right, let's get out of siege mode. Look at that, almost instantly. Fantastic, that's very, very good. We can redeploy. Yeah, this is a really, really good TD. Oh. Okay. See what we can do against the light tank, shall we? Go to siege mode. Crawl forward. Still crawl, but bounced off the side of it, would you believe it? Oh, there's another one out there. Okay. You can't turn round T-54 head, lightweight, but yeah, I like the Tier 10. I think that's a really, really pokey tank. Really pokey. And the changes haven't actually, I think, have significantly improved it. I don't particularly notice the extra load time. Certainly notice the ability to move slightly quicker when in siege mode, which is a huge advantage, and certainly the dispersion after firing is not great, but given the fact the load time's slightly longer now, you don't really notice that terribly. So yeah, good, really good TD, really good TD. Can't wait to get this on my live account. Look at the results here. It was victory, obviously, second class mastery, spotter, 5 for effect, arsonist for that poor object 140. What a bugger, you're just trying out a 140 because you're probably about to unlock it and you're first gaming it first of all, and she gets set on fire and killed. Bruiser, 2000 damage, 3 kills, 874 base XP, fired 8 shots, hit with 7 of them, penned with 5. We took 4 hits, but 3 of them penned, 1 didn't. So definitely the armour is not as good as it was. That is a big problem for this thing. The change in the ricochet rules mean that unless in that, like I was in that first game where I was on the hill, so looking down, and therefore the angling was even more marked, I think you're going to have a hell of a job bouncing much in this tank. The odd shell you will, but yeah, it's going to be pretty tough. 42,000 credits, obviously paid for the cinnamon consumables, so I lost 6,000, but would have been 14,000 plus, which in a tier 10 is pretty good. 1,313 experience, very nice. Okay, so same thing again, let's take out the tier 9 variant. This has also had those changes on the test server, so increased speed to siege mode and out of siege mode, increased gun dispersion after firing, better speed when in siege mode, but reload time nerfed a little bit, so real mixed bag of changes, so let's go see whether that makes any significant difference. Okay, this is Malavinka, I don't know, whatever. It's a nice big open one, which is what we want in a TD, ideally. Tier 9 game, so that's nice as well. Good opportunity to try this thing out. as I said in the garage, this I think I said in the garage. If I didn't, I meant to. It's 100% crew on this, but they have no sixth sense, no crew skills at all. Started them up on camo. I've put gun rammer, binos, and camo net on this thing to accentuate its concealment, and I'm using cinnamon and coffee, which is the consumables for the Swedish branch. So I'm going to just go down and be a good old camper. Still good off the ground, still moves quickly, which is nice. Now the one thing that is really good now with this is that you can get into siege mode much easier, and you don't have to pull forward quite as far. Don't know where that shell went. That's interesting. Aiming reticle on this seems to have definitely got worse. See how long it's taking to aim back in after the shell. It's left. Get that WZ. Shell speed's very quick, which is nice. Don't know why I didn't hit that fella. I don't know if I can hit him, he's in. So the angling after you've, or the angling, what I'm talking about. The radical after you've fired, so it takes a long time to settle down. It's a shame. Get the gun there, I think. Forward a bit. I like the fact you can manoeuvre a bit more now when you're in TD mode. Makes a big difference. And the gun fires beautifully as it did before. I think overrun here. 8-2. Good grief. Must be spotted in a minute. Reload time definitely slower, but still effective gun. Missed it. Okay, never mind. So the reload definitely seems to be longer. It's noticeably longer. The radical after you fired is quite considerably bigger, but it's still a nice gun, still a nice TD. I'll certainly be happy to play down this line. I think it's going to be great fun. I was derailed a bit by how good the mediums and heavies were, but now they've all been nerfed. I may prioritise, as I originally planned to, down the TD line. We'll see. I may just do my normal thing and do both. Not so clever. Anyway, we'll see the results afterwards. Well, we could see that was going to be a loss. We got Big Dick, we got Fire for Effect. Finished top of the team, 2,931 damage, 1 kill, 308 base XP, surprised by that. 13 shots fired, hit with 8, penned with all the 8 we hit for that nearly 3,000 damage. We took 5 hits, but unlike the tier 10, they were all pretty much all penetrations, we only bounced 1. which is interesting, which was a 400 round, so it was 33,000 credits. We obviously, the cinnamon costs us a fair bit, so that comes because I don't have any in the garage. We would have made a profit of 6,000 with a premium account, so not too bad. 462 base XP. So again, the dispersion after firing is noticeable on this tank, but the benefit of being able to move faster in siege mode is hugely good, because you can set up just below the hill, hit the siege mode, then roll forward, and you're in perfect position to be able to blast things. So I like that a lot. So let's take the tier 9 out again. We're in a tier 10 game, so yeah, sucks to be us. But we're going to try and use that gun depression, use that angling again, and try and get up to where the mediums usually go. The good thing about these tanks is they are pretty mobile TDs. Can we get through without slowing everything down? Trouble is, all these mediums are probably going exactly where I'd like to go, and they're all tier 10s, so I probably should let them get there. They can beat me to it, so I'm doing 50 kph, there you go. Got up to it pretty quickly. 100% crew on this tank, but no 6th sense or anything. There's an object 704 over there, I don't think he would have spotted me, which is a blessing. Object 114 might have done. Okay. Get into siege mode. Go forward. Let's try and see. It's noticeable how slow it is to reload after you've fired. That is something I will definitely say in this tank. That's a bit of a shame, really. The tier 9 is worse than the tier 10, I think. Bounced a shot, but that's only because we were angled, I think. That wasn't the wisest thing to do, Dom. Track that fella. Oof. Artillery just wiped him out. Punched his clock. So I'm going to pull back round. Eek. Use his dead carcass, because I'm not worried about. I don't think anything else is going to be pushing across. Maybe. Time for thinking about it. It might be. Yeah, I think Time 4's thinking about having a little trundle. While I do very little here. Was he even aware? I don't think he was. So we can move in siege mode now, this is great. Can't really do much on this one though. Around me. Not much I can do about that, it was a bit silly. It's loaded premium, pushing me up the slope. Oh dear. He tracked me and just pushed me upwards and sideways. There's nothing I could do. So I don't know, it wasn't a great game there, but it feels like the nerf of the reload and the dispersion is worse on the tier 9 than it does on the tier 10. Makes the tier 9 not as much fun to play as it once was, but the tier 10, yeah, that's pretty good still. So another loss in the tier 9. Didn't play brilliantly, but still finished 4th on the team. 1096 damage, 1 kill, 414 base XP, 6 shots fired, all 6 hit but only 3 penned. Took 5 hits, 3 of which didn't pen, 2 of which didn't pen, 3 did. 21,000 credits, again used consumables, so we lost 19, nearly 20,000, so we probably would have broken even if we'd had the consumable in the depot. 621 base XP. So all in all, these changes to the TDs I think actually are pretty strong, certainly for the tier 10. I think it actually improves it. The time taken to switch between siege mode and travel mode reduction is considerably noticeable and a really good thing, but more so because you can move more effectively in siege mode. So that increase in speed allows you to get behind a crest, get in cover first of all, while back, go into siege mode and then move forward, whereas previously it was so slow, it was just pointless. You really had to get up into the front line, then you're into siege mode. Reload time between shells, it's worse on the tier 9 than the tier 10, I think, although it's not horrible because you have to wait for the dispersion to settle down because that nerf has an effect there. So the combined effect is definitely worse in the tier 9 than the tier 10. Tier 10 is still a very good TD. And the accuracy doesn't appear to be terrible and any worse than it was. I think it's actually very good still. So bottom line, I think there's more positives than negatives on the test server. I think the changes to the overmatching mechanics to me make more sense. I don't see that a tank with 40mm of armor should really be bouncing massive great shells all the time, no matter how well it's angled, but maybe that's just me. And I guess we'll know more when it hits the real server. But I still like these TDs. I think they're really good. I was a bit distracted by the mediums and heavies because they were so good. But now they've been nerfed, I'll probably focus more on the TDs to start with when this server comes into the game. We're talking about the patch coming on around about the 14th of December. So that's not actually terribly far, a couple of weeks away, so it'd be really interesting to see when they come. So it means we all have Christmas to play with all the new Swedish toys, so that's very nice. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this recap of the test server and the changes to the tier 9 and tier 10 TDs. If you did, click like down below and let me know what you think about the changes they've made. Is it more realistic? I think the general opinion on the changes to the mediums and heavies is that it was probably needed. They were OP as they stood, so they needed a bit of a nerf, but there's been a significant nerf with the changes to the ricochet as well. So yeah, interesting. Let me know what you think. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. Just click on the red subscribe button. It's free. You won't get any marketing. I promise not to come to visit your house unless you really pay me a lot of money. And in the meantime, have fun, enjoy your games. Just remember, it is a game and try not to take it too seriously. And I'll see you again soon. Gamer Dom out.